impact our relationship with God. And so last week we spent some time doing some Old Testament work. We're going to do a little Old Testament work this weekend because both Testaments, the Bible, Old and New, are good for us to use, are good for us to learn from. And so today we're in Genesis 25. Genesis 25, we're also going to be in chapter 27 a little bit. And we're going to look at the story of Jacob and Esau. We're going to look at what happened a little bit there, what was going on, and I think some of the unhealthy family relationships. Now, family relationships are absolutely essential. We all have a family, whether we are proud of them or not, may be a different scenario, but we all have a family, and the family that we have really has an impact on the way we see the world and on the relationships that we'll develop with other people. The way our family lives, works, eats, celebrates, and shows affection has lasting impacts. And we can learn healthy and unhealthy things from our families. I'm constantly reminded that my kids are watching everything I do, because at this age, Allie reminds me of the things that I have done. Better yet, she tells me the things that Jen has done. And I assume that she tells Jen the things that I've done. One of my favorites was the other day in traffic. We pulled up behind a line of cars. She goes, "Mommy doesn't like to follow cars, Daddy." I said, "Really?" "Yeah, Daddy, it doesn't matter if there's 1 car, 2 cars, 3 cars, 4 cars, or 5 cars. Mommy doesn't like to follow them. They get in her way." And I said, "Okay, how about that? I can relate." But as kids, we learn things from our parents. We learn what we see. We learn what we see other adults do. And it has an impact on the way we see the world. And the family that we're going to learn and read about today, I bet some of us know about. But this is a very special family. It is Isaac, who was the beloved son of Abraham. Now, if you remember the story of Abraham and Sarah, they did not have children. She was barren. She prayed and prayed and prayed, and Abraham prayed. And they tried to find another way around. And finally, when they were well beyond childbearing years, and I just don't know why God would grant children at 100 years old, because sometimes at my age, it's rough now. I can't imagine at 100. God blessed them with Isaac. And so Isaac is this very special person in the kingdom. One who was prayed for, who was waited for, who was chosen. And so you would expect things to go well in Isaac's life, right? You would expect everything to just be perfect because he is really set aside from God. Let's see how this is going here. Genesis chapter 5 if you have your Bible, 25 if you have your Bibles. And we're actually going to pick up with verse 21. It's the story of Jacob and Esau. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. Already they're starting off with trouble. They wanted to have a child, and they weren't able to, and so they're praying, and God blesses them with children. The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. The Lord said to her, "2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. 1 people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." That is not the news she was looking for. I'm convinced of it. That is a lifelong story of your children are going to fight. Now, as parents, those of us know that, right? Where 2 or more are gathered, bickering can occur. And that sometimes makes its way into adulthood. At this age, kids can fight. But imagine them from the time they are conceived, jostling and fighting within the womb. So when the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. So they named him Esau. By the way, how would you like to be described like that? He was like a hairy garment. That was one hairy child as he's coming out. After this, his brother came out, with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was a quiet man, staying home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country famished. He said to Jacob, quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished. That is why he was also called Edom. Jacob replied, first sell me your birthright. Look, I am about to die, Esau said. What good is the birthright to me? But Jacob said, swear to me first. So he swore an oath to him, selling him his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank, and then got up and left. One of the most commonly held misconceptions about the scripture is that things are always perfect for people in the Bible. Now, we would say that, well, we know some of the stories aren't perfect, but when people think about the Bible, maybe they haven't spent time reading, or haven't spent time studying, or the stories that they've heard are just about Jesus doing miracles, and so they draw this overarching idea that if you're mentioned in the Bible, life must have been perfect for you. We are starting to see right here within this family some unhealthy patterns, some unhealthy things that are happening that just aren't good. First, one of the struggles that they have is that they weren't able to have children. They had to wait and wait and wait and pray, and finally God blesses them with children. But it's a struggle. And then as these children are born, it becomes very evident that they're different. Now, all children are different, but these two are like night and day different. Esau, hairy beast. Jacob, smooth skin. Esau wants to be out in the field hunting, gathering, working. Jacob wants to be in the tents. He wants to stay around the house. And so this inclination to one parent and the other occurs. And did you catch what we actually read in verses 27 and 8? Which one really loved Esau? Isaac, right? Isaac really loved Esau. And Rebekah really loved Jacob. And there are these unhealthy dynamics that develop here of almost preferential treatment, of favored child. One parent takes one, the other parent takes the other. And guess what's going to happen with that? Does it go well? Usually not. Usually it leads to some resentment, and as Jacob was coming out of the womb, he held on to Esau's heel. And so one of the things that had always bothered him was that because of a few seconds, Esau got the birthright, he didn't. Think about that. Born within minutes of each other, I'm older than you. And by the way, Dad likes me best. It's going to lead to some family tension. It's going to lead to some family problems. And I don't think it was just a coincidence that Jacob happened to have food when Esau came in hungry. I suspect that Jacob had been plotting this and had been ready quite a few times and was waiting for his brother to come in and say, I'm so hungry, I'll do anything to get food, because this is like pre-microwave generation. Right? And you can't just swing by Little Caesars and grab a hot and ready. Takes some work. And so here he is starving, and he says, well, if I die, the birthright's going to give to me anyway, so you can have it. And Jacob takes something away from Esau. Something that I think he felt he should have had from the beginning. Let's just get started. Chapter 27. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, my son, here I am, he answered. Isaac said, I am now an old man and don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your weapons, your quiver and bow, and go out to the open country and hunt some wild game for me. Prepare for me the kind of tasty food I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die. Now Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau left for the open country to hunt game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, look, I overheard your father say to your brother Esau, bring me some game and prepare me some tasty food to eat, so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die. Now, my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats, so I can prepare some tasty food for your father, just the way he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat, so that he may give you his blessing before he dies." Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, "But my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a man with smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing." His mother said to him, "My son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Go and get them for me." So he went and got them, brought them to his mother, and she prepared some tasty food just the way his father liked it. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, her older son, which she had in the house, and put them on her younger son Jacob. She also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with goat skins. Then she handed to her son Jacob the tasty food and the bread she had made. He went to his father and said, "My father." "Yes, my son," he answered. "Who is it?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game, so that you may give me your blessing." Isaac asked his son, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" "The Lord gave me success," he replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near so I can touch you, my son, so to know whether you really are my son Esau or not." Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau, so he blessed him. "Are you really my son Esau?" he asked. "I am," he replied. Then he said, "My son, bring me your game to eat, so that I may give you my blessing." Jacob brought it to him, and he ate, and he brought some wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come here, my son, and kiss me." So he went to him and kissed him. When Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him and said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and of earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." After Isaac finished blessing him, and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, his brother Esau came in from hunting. He too prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father. Then he said to him, "My father, sit up and eat some of my game, so that you may give me your blessing." His father Isaac asked him, "Who are you?" "I am your son," he answered, "your firstborn, Esau." Isaac trembled violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed." When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, "Bless me too, my father." But he said, "Your brother has deceitfully came and took your blessing." Esau said, "Isn't he rightly named Jacob? He has deceived me these 2 times. He took my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing." Then he asked, "Haven't you reserved any blessing for me?" Isaac answered Esau, "I have made him lord over you, and have made all of his relatives his servants, and I have sustained him with grain and new wine. So what can I possibly do for you, my son?" Esau said to his father, "Do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too." Then Esau wept aloud. His father Isaac answered him, "Your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw your yoke from off your neck." Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are near, then I will kill my brother Jacob." When Rebekah was told what her older son Esau had said, she sent for her younger son Jacob and said to him, "Your brother Esau is consoling himself with the thought of killing you. Now then, my son, do what I say. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay with him for a while until your brother's fury subsides. And when your brother is no longer angry with you and forgets what you did to him, I will send word for you to come back from there. Why should I lose both of you in one day?" Then Rebekah said to Isaac, "I am disgusted with living here because of the Hittite women. If Jacob takes a wife from among these women in this land, from Hittite women like these, my life will not be worth living." It's a long passage, but what a story. Look at the dysfunction within this, and it starts with each parent having a favorite child, and it continues, the tension builds and builds and builds. Imagine the tension that must have been between Rebekah and Isaac. For the wife to hear, this is what I'm about to do with our oldest son, and to say, you know what? I want Jacob to get this instead of Esau. I want this child to be blessed instead of this other one. And the only way to do that is to lie to my husband, to fool him, to trick him. And what a plan! What deviousness in that family system. I can only imagine what it felt like to be Esau when he came back from the field and realized what had happened. And I'm sure with everyone around that he got the full picture of what had happened. That it wasn't just his brother, but his mother who was in on it. Our family relationships influence the way we do things. They influence the things that we see and that happen to us. In this family system, it's full of lying, scheming, tricking, preferential treatment, and it ends with one sibling ready to kill the other. Fun times, right? It's almost like a Bible soap opera. It really is. Everything that's in here, all of the problems. And somehow, Jacob, for being smart enough to devise these plans to trick his brother, missed the fact that his brother would be upset. And something that he thought would be a wonderful reward, something that he thought God's blessing in his life that he really needed, ends up turning into a burden, to where he has to flee for his life. That is what sin does to us. We think we're getting something wonderful, and it ends up being a problem. It ends up causing more harm. It ends up making things worse in our life. Imagine how much it hurt when this family was ripped apart. One son ready to kill the other. And so the son who did all the deceitfulness has to leave. As we were nearing the holidays, all I could think of is what... Now, I know that they didn't have Thanksgiving, but imagine what a Thanksgiving dinner that would be. There is no joy in that. There is no fun in that. Now, we look at this story as New Testament Christians. Couldn't really be an Old Testament Christian. You're an Old Testament follower of Yahweh, but we are New Testament Christians, which means that we are living on this side of the cross. So what we do is we look back to this story, and something that we don't even realize is we say, well, why was this blessing such a big deal? Because for most of us, we have grown up in the church, and we've grown up knowing that God loves us, or we've heard that at some point along the way. I did grow up in the church, and I grew up knowing how much God loved me. I grew up knowing that God had sent Jesus to die for my sins. I grew up knowing that God wanted a personal relationship with me. That is something that, when we are on this side of the cross, that is very common to us. We know and understand who Jesus is, and that God wants this relationship with us. But they were on this side of the cross. And this blessing, it was a divine passing. It was not just the stuff that goes with it. The stuff was the birthright. The birthright that Esau traded away, that was all the possessions. That was the inheritance that Esau should have had. And he gave that to Jacob. It was stuff. And you know what? We can replace stuff. But this blessing, it sounds like words to us. And it sounds like something that a dying father should say to his child. But it was so much more. Because it was the blessing of God passed from Isaac that was passed from his father. And so there is this patriarchal lineage. And when Jacob steals it, it's something that Esau can never replace. The horizontal relationships, the unhealth in the way that people were living and acting with one another in the family, just had a huge vertical impact. Does that make sense? We look at this and we are so of the mindset that God wants a relationship with me, so it's just what I do, and that is a this side of the cross attitude. That I know God wants a relationship with me. I know that Jesus died for my sins. I know that God loves me because we've read it throughout the scriptures. And so we tend to minimize our horizontal relationships. We tend to minimize the impact that people have on our life and that we have on the lives of others. But over here, we can see how it happened. Because there wasn't this open relationship for everyone, it was this divine passage. Esau misses out on this connection. And it's something that no one can replace. And so imagine knowing that you are about to be in line for this divine relationship, this divine passing with God, and now you missed out on it. I think it's hard for us to understand because we're used to replacing stuff. We're used to stuff being simple and words being cheap. I think words are very cheap. We say a lot of things that we don't mean. We say a lot of things that we don't even think about. And I have been guilty more than once of talking without thinking. Perhaps some of you have too. And so words are cheap to us. But these words, in this context, on this side of the cross, were irreplaceable. Does that make sense? They couldn't be taken back once they were given. And Isaac wept as much as Esau did. I think about this. We know that Isaac was near the end of his life. The story tells us that he was near death. That for him, death was any day. He didn't know when that would be. And imagine dying with the pain, knowing that what you were supposed to give to one, you were tricked into giving to the other. And hearing the pain in his other son's life. A few well-chosen words today can still have a life-changing impact, as well as a few carelessly spoken words. There are words that we can't take back. You just can't take back, I'm going to kill my brother. Right? We just can't take back, I hate you. We can't really take back mean and nasty things that we say. They have a lifelong impact. And as I talk with people and share this, and as I'm back into mobile therapy and doing BSC stuff, I remind the parents that I work with, and it's a good reminder for myself, it is a 12-to-1 ratio, the last I heard, 12 positive words to equal the impact of one negative word. 12-to-1, and that it equals it. It doesn't erase it. We are drawn to the negative. They tend to have power in that. 12-to-1. We better believe that our horizontal relationships have an impact vertically. We see it here in the impact of Jacob and Esau and Isaac and Rebekah. What a mess. But you know what? We're not going to leave it here. Because our God is a God of redemption. And even when we make things a mess, even on this side of the cross, there is hope. There is hope for restoration. And what I love, I'm not going to go all the way through it, but in Genesis 33, it tells us the story of reconciliation. It tells us of what it was like when Jacob and Esau got together after being apart for many years. And the full story is that Jacob starts sending peace offerings. Many years have passed. And Jacob starts sending peace offerings to his brother because in that time, maybe God convicted him. Maybe he realized that what he had done was wrong. But he knows that he can't keep estranged from his brother like this. And so he begins sending stuff to his brother in chapter 32. But when you get to chapter 33, I love this. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau, coming with his 400 men. So he divided his children among Leah and Rachel and the two maidservants. He put the maidservants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph in the rear. He himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and children. Who are these with you? He asked. They are the children God has graciously given your servant. What I love is that no matter how messed up our horizontal relationships get, there is always the hope of reconciliation when God is at work. I love that not only what Jacob was sending stuff to Esau, but that when Esau saw him coming, he didn't stand there and cross his arms and say, boy, you messed me up how many years ago? I'm going to get you now. What's he do? He runs to him. He throws his arm around him. They weep together, and he realizes that he's missed out. Jacob has missed out. And he says, who are these people with you? These are my kids. It's my family. Let me introduce you. And it is a good moment. It is a redeeming moment when we see problems. I look at this and I want you to understand, you know what? Our family can teach us many things. They can teach us good things, bad things, healthy things, unhealthy things. But we have the choice how we're going to live with that. We have the choice with what we're going to do with those things. And as I look at this, and I know that there are extreme cases, but when God is at work, and at work within both parties, and both parties are changed, there can really be redemption. And there can be rifts repaired that have been torn. I want you to think about this today. Because we're getting close to the holidays, and because our relationships are around us all year long, I want you to think about the relationships that we have, whether they are good or bad, healthy or unhealthy. And if they are not in the good shape, if they are not God-honoring relationships, then I would encourage you this day to start to pray for them if you haven't been. And to pray for that person, and to pray that if you have done something that was wrong, and you don't know it, that God would convict you of it. It's part of healing, right? Part of moving ahead is taking ownership for the stuff that we do, and praying for forgiveness that way, but also working towards restoration and reconciliation where it's possible. Because it is impossible, I just think it is impossible to have awful horizontal human relationships and to say that God and I are perfect. Because our horizontal and our vertical connect. Let's close in prayer today. God, we thank you for time together. We thank you for family. We thank you for friends. And God, we know as we thank you for that, that we realize that those relationships do not always go well. That things that we think will work do not. Things that we thought were okay in the moment were bigger problems than we realized. Things that we didn't even realize caused a problem that had long-lasting impacts. And so, God, we just ask for you to be at work within our hearts, within our lives, within our families, within our relationships. And God, if we have hurt, God, we ask for forgiveness. If we have caused pain and division, God, we ask that you would bring healing as we work with you in that. And God, if we have been the recipients of pain, if we have had hurt in our life, God, help us to heal. And help the other party who's also involved. God, we just thank you for today. We thank you for this time. And God, this way of living and connecting with other people sure gets messy. But help us to do it in a God-honoring way. Help us to love others the way you love us. And to know that forgiveness is always possible. We thank you for this time. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.